They used to whisper about Earth like it was a myth, some cradle world that birthed demons in human skin. Most species believed the humans were wiped out during the collapse wars 500 years ago. Good riddance, they said. One less threat to the galaxy, one less wildcard species driven by rage and revenge instead of logic and peace. But the galaxy didn't know the truth. Humans weren't extinct. They were sleeping, buried deep in cryo-vaults carved into the crust of ruined planets far beyond the fringe of explored space. They waited, silent, preserved, programmed not to wake until the stars bled red, until someone foolish enough triggered the beacon. And of course, someone did. He wasn't a soldier, not even close. His name was Tren, a wide-eyed Zilith archaeologist with more curiosity than sense. He wanted prestige, discovery, a legacy. What he found instead was an ancient vault on a dead moon orbiting the remains of what used to be Mars. Buried under 2 kilometers of fused glass and metal, the vault door hadn't opened in centuries, until he cracked it. And when it did, the signal went out. I know this because I was the first one to wake. I wasn't a general, not back then. I was just one of thousands, no, millions, of human war assets frozen at the height of our expansion. We had built everything: ships, AI swarms, time-bent artillery. But most of all, we had built fear. We were the unspoken threat. The war gods who had beaten back the Takari hegemony, shattered the Ivaran dynasty, and turned black holes into tactical weapons. And when the alliances got tired of fearing us, they hit us with a combined strike, one so catastrophic we couldn't retaliate. So we slept. Or rather, we were put to sleep. Not out of mercy, but fear. When I opened my eyes, the first thing I felt wasn't confusion. It was rage. Muscle memory kicked in. My neural mesh spun up. Systems rebooted one after another. My name wasn't important anymore. Names were for peacetime. I was Designate 5 Helix, commander of the 18th Shockborne Infantry. Before Cryo, I'd led men through 33 dark space campaigns. I had watched friends get torn apart by molecular shredders and watched cities fall like sandcastles to human war engines. I was trained for war, built for it. And war was coming again. The vault's interior was pristine, our weapons sealed, AI cores offline but intact. Cryo bays slowly defrosted the others, one by one. They'd rise. But I didn't wait. I overrode protocol. Stepped out half-frozen, skin still steaming from the thaw. My first breath tasted of sterilized air and forgotten vengeance. There were signs of intrusion. Someone had been inside. Messy scans. Equipment still warm. And a trail. Footsteps from a biped, small and delicate. A Tzenegedic. I tracked the trail to the outer corridor. The fool was still there, muttering into some data pad. His 4 arms trembled. He hadn't even heard me yet. He turned and screamed. "You—" he stammered, dropping the scanner. "You're not supposed to be— This place was—" I said nothing. He backed up, stuttering some desperate explanation about exploration, scholarship, peace treaties. None of it mattered. "Do you know what you've done?" I asked, voice dry and rough like broken glass. My throat hadn't spoken in half a millennium. "I didn't know, I swear!" he cried. "I thought it was just a tomb. I didn't know you were still alive." "That's the thing," I said, stepping closer. "We never die. We just wait." Behind me, I could hear the others waking. Cryo chambers releasing gas, hydraulic limbs hissing to life. One by one, the war gods were rising. The galaxy had forgotten what we were. Now it was going to remember. The vault rumbled like it was breathing. That's how it always sounded when the others began waking up. Slow, mechanical exhales, metal groaning as stasis seals peeled open. A low hum filled the air, a sound I hadn't heard since the final day of the collapse wars. It was the heartbeat of humanity's last soldiers returning to the world they once bled for. I didn't take my eyes off the Zilith. He was on his knees now, trembling, 4 thin arms held out like he thought begging might save him. But I wasn't going to kill him. Not yet. He needed to see what he'd done. Behind me, the chamber lights blinked into amber. That meant secondary systems were coming online. Comms, drone hangars, surface relays. The vault was waking up with us. The Zilith muttered, "Please." I only wanted to understand. "We thought you were legends." I grabbed him by the collar, my hand wrapping around his twig-thin neck with practiced control. Not enough to crush, just enough to quiet him. "You studied us like animals in a glass case. You poked the wrong god, alien." His eyes widened. "You're monsters." "No," I said flatly. "We're the reason your galaxy had peace for 500 years, and you just ended it." Behind me, footsteps echoed down the corridor. Heavy armored boots, standard issue for deep cryo infantry. I turned and saw him, one of mine. Broad shoulders, dull silver plating scarred with old blast marks, his eyes still adjusting to the light. "Commander," he said, voice hoarse. "I remember you. 18th Shockborn. You pulled me out of the singularity trap during the siege of Charon." I nodded once. "You're awake now. Good. We've got company." His gaze dropped to the Zilith, and the recognition lit something dark in his face. "That a problem?" "Woke us up. Set off the signal." The soldier didn't ask questions. He just muttered, "Then the galaxy's about to burn again." The signal. That was the worst part. The beacon that had gone out when the vault was opened didn't just alert other vaults, it triggered the Deadman Protocol. Every hidden war vault spread across human space, every moon, every derelict colony, every deep space military bunker was now spinning up. Thousands of them. Millions of soldiers. AI-controlled fleets, orbital kinetic rods that hadn't dropped in centuries. If the galaxy thought Earth's legacy was a ghost story, they were about to get a damn history lesson in fire. But there was one more detail. The vault didn't wake us up to retake the galaxy. It woke us to finish the war we never lost, the one we were denied a chance to end. The soldier at my side, his name was Riker, checked his internal systems, flexing his fingers like they hadn't moved in generations. "We heading to the surface?" I glanced at the trembling Zilith. First, we let him watch. We dragged him up to the vault's surface doors. They hadn't opened in half a millennium, but the internal AI had already processed the signal. Slowly, like the peeling of some ancient tomb, the gates split apart, revealing what remained of the sky. It was black. Not night, just space itself, stretched out above the dead moon. But there was something new, something alive. Orbiting above us was a ship, and not one of ours. Riker hissed, "That's a Zilith Explorer class. Low shields, no weapons, pathetic." "They came here like they owned the place," I muttered. "We're going to return the favor." The alien pilot above probably thought this was a salvage site. Maybe he figured Tren was cataloging ancient artifacts for the Science Guild. He had no idea what had just happened. That was about to change. The vault's uplink node lit up. I slid my neural link into the mainframe and felt it connect with a jolt of pure memory. Locations poured into my mind, coordinates of other war vaults, activation sequences for AI dreadnoughts, even orbital cannon platforms lost in deep space debris fields. It was all still intact. Humanity hadn't died. It had hidden. And now we were back. Tren whimpered beside me. "What are you going to do?" I looked down at him with the cold calm I'd learned the hard way in a dozen war zones. "We're going to remind the stars what fear feels like." And far above us, the stars began blinking with movement, ships warping in, pulses of light streaking across the dark. Not alien fleets. Ours. The sky was filling with ghosts. Black silhouettes of warships blinked into orbit one by one. Triangular hulls with scarred armor, no insignias, no lights, no communication broadcasts. Silent, patient, dead things breathing again. The Zilith ship above us turned slowly, sensors likely detecting the sudden gravitational anomalies. It would take them less than a minute to realize they were surrounded. They wouldn't survive that minute. Riker stood beside me on the platform, helmet under his arm, eyes locked on the heavens. I could see it in his expression. He remembered. Not just the battles, not just the victories, but the cost, the pain, the rage that carved trenches into men's souls deeper than any battlefield ever could. He spoke quietly, almost like he was afraid to wake the moment. "We're really back." "We never left," I said. Tren collapsed to the ground beside us, arms over his head like a child hiding from thunder. "Please," he begged. "They'll come for me. My people, my guild. They didn't know. They're not soldiers." "No," I said flatly, "but they'll die like them just the same." He flinched like he'd been struck. I didn't care. I'd buried too many friends to waste mercy on those who lit the fuse and cried innocence when it blew. The uplink buzzed again. This time it was a full connection, command-level priority. Someone else was online, not just another Vault AI, a living human, speaking. "Designation 5 Helix." A voice crackled through my neural mesh, smooth but laced with static. "This is Forge Node Alpha, Commander Alric Venn, 3rd Orbital Fleet. Do you read?" I didn't hesitate. "Reading you, Commander. Vault 19 has awakened. Personnel status, returning to combat ready." There was a pause, a static hum, then, "Good. You're the 6th Vault to come online. The stars are moving. They're afraid." That last part wasn't a guess. The interstellar traffic data pouring in confirmed it. Alien comms were going dark across 3 sectors. Border patrols from the Everan remnant were pulling back. Even the Vatari, those oversized reptiles with their smug peace accords, had started issuing military alerts. They all felt it. The sleeping war gods were walking again. "Orders?" I asked. "Phase 1 reclamation. We take back Earth." Silence hung for a moment. Riker looked at me, his jaw tight. "Earth's still there." "Apparently," I said. That didn't mean it was still ours. Tren had curled up now, rocking slightly. "You don't understand." He whispered. "The Galactic Alliance, they made Earth a relic site. Nobody goes there. It's been off-limits for 200 years. Anyone who approaches gets turned to ash." That stung more than I expected. They turned our home into a museum, a graveyard no one was allowed to visit. They buried us, and then built walls to keep us forgotten. Riker cracked his neck. "Then we're going to tear those walls down." I activated the Vault's launch interface. The platform beneath us began to shift, rising like an ancient beast shaking off centuries of dust. One by one, my men were filing out of cryo. Hundreds, soon thousands. Some still dazed, others already suiting up. Faces familiar and foreign, all marked by the same truth. They were human, and they were warriors. And they had just been betrayed by 5 centuries of silence. "We'll need ships," I muttered. "Already inbound." Venn's voice replied. "Old fleets are assembling in the Ort cradle. Forgotten vessels, ghost units, even the AIs are waking." That part made me pause. The A is humanity's crown jewel and our greatest nightmare. Some had gone rogue near the end, pushed too far by war. Others were loyal. Cold, efficient, merciless, but loyal. If they were waking now, it meant the Deadman Protocol had reached full activation. Everything that made humanity feared was coming back. And it wasn't just us anymore. I looked down at Tren, who stared up at me like a man looking at his own execution. "I need you alive," I told him. He blinked. "Why?" "Because you're going to be our voice," I said. "You're going to tell your people the truth, not the lie they built over our graves, the truth." He opened his mouth to protest, but Riker leaned in, his voice quiet but venomous. "You want to live? Then you start writing history right." The platform locked into place as the hangar bay opened. Above, human warships formed a jagged crown around the planet. And in the center of it all, a single word flashed on every HUD, every data pad, every command line in our systems: reclamation. We left the dead moon behind like it never existed. The dropships were old, but still savage, sleek, black, lined with thermal disruptors and plasma shielding, the kind of ride that didn't land quietly. It announced itself. As we punched through the upper atmosphere of what used to be Earth's orbital perimeter, I got my first look at it in over 500 years. It wasn't home, it was a cage. Massive orbital rings floated around the planet, sterile, silver-white, gleaming with alien tech. Not human design. Defensive satellites, scanning stations, automated defense platforms. Enough firepower to pulverize a continent. It wasn't a blockade. It was a quarantine. They weren't guarding Earth. They were guarding it from us. "Visual confirms," Riker muttered beside me. "No human transponders. That's all alien scrap." My hands curled into fists. They'd erased us, made Earth a neutral site. A galactic memory reserve, Tren had called it in the debrief. Off-limits, sanctified. A shrine built on the lie that humanity had died for the greater good. We didn't die. We were put to sleep like dogs. "ETA 60 seconds. The pilot barked from the front. I opened communications. "All drop squads, prepare for breach. I want a clean landing on the outer rim. No full assault. Not yet. We're not here to destroy Earth. We're here to take it back." "Copy 5 Helix," came the chorus of voices. Some still rough with cryo-stiffness, others steady as if 5 centuries of rest had done nothing to dull their edge. The ship rocked as defense grid scanners pinged us. Their algorithms were scanning for known hostiles, but none of our old signatures existed anymore. We were ghosts to their systems. Unlogged. Unseen. That was about to end. The first shot came from a satellite defense turret, brilliant red plasma slicing across the sky. Too slow. Too damn late. Our countermeasures kicked in immediately. The ship spun and dropped. Riker was already bracing, eyes calm, like he'd done this 1,000 times before. I gripped the side rail as the planet loomed into full view below us. Brown, grey, stripped. They'd paved over the oceans with solar lattices, dismantled forests to mine the bedrock. What used to be Earth was now an industrial core world run by alien guilds and bureaucracies who never knew what it cost to build it in the first place. They didn't deserve it. The ship slammed into the landing zone, a broken ridge where an old human city once stood. I recognized the outline beneath the dust and steel. It was what remained of Chicago, my hometown. Or what was left of it. We hit dirt hard, ramp down, guns drawn. "Move!" I shouted, and my team poured out. Infantry in black armor, scanners lit, weapons powered. We weren't here to negotiate, we were here to warn. We took the ridge in under 5 minutes. A defense drone tried to resist. One of those Vatari models with high output stun fields. Riker shot it midair with a rail slug. It didn't even get to scream. Then we saw the first patrol, alien civilians in light armor, more ceremonial than practical. A trio of Ivorans, bird-faced diplomats. They froze when they saw us. One raised a hand, speaking in broken English. "Identify yourselves. This is a protected—" Riker shot the ground in front of him. The alien flinched. "You know who we are," I said. He looked at me, recognition slowly blooming in his yellow eyes. You're human, he whispered. You're not supposed to be. Yeah, I said, stepping closer. Surprise. We didn't shoot them. Not yet. I wanted them alive. I wanted them to go back to their precious councils, their spineless parliaments, and tell them what was coming. Because this wasn't just a reappearance, it was a reckoning. I turned to my men. Secure the site. Set up uplinks. Get orbital sync with the rest of the fleet. I want a communication line across all remaining Earth territories. Riker stepped beside me, visor down. They're gonna fight us. They always were, I replied. They just forgot why they used to lose. From the ridge, I stared at the horizon. Far off, towering metal structures clawed at the sky, alien constructs built over human bones. And somewhere out there, beneath all that ruin, our real history was buried. Not anymore. We were going to dig it out, with blood if we had to. The first strike came faster than expected. 2 hours after we landed, the sky lit up with streaks of green, plasma torpedoes, fired from a Vatari orbital platform we hadn't detected. They must have been cloaked, waiting, hoping to catch us before we fortified. They didn't. Our orbital net was already sinking. The ancient AI core from Vault 19, nicknamed Argus, had established a defensive matrix around the ridge using repurposed comms towers and what was left of an old subway grid beneath the ruins. The torpedoes didn't even get close. Our counter-batteries lit them out of the sky, atomizing them mid-air with enough force to shake what was left of the city. Riker stood beside me, calm as stone. Guess they figured out we're not here to take pictures. I didn't smile. Good. I was starting to feel ignored. The Vatari weren't the problem. Not really. Their strength was diplomacy, not war. Their idea of a fight was a well-worded treaty and a public apology. But they had tech, and they had orders from the Council, and the Council wanted Earth sealed. Still, even now, they weren't here to fight us. They were here to contain us. That was their mistake. Containment doesn't work on monsters like us. It just keeps us hungry. Status on the uplinks? I barked into comms. A young tech, barely out of stasis, answered. We've reactivated the deep core array. Main relays patched into an old human suborbital drone network. Signal's strong. We're pushing live footage to the fleet now. Good. I turned and grabbed one of the alien patrol guards we'd captured earlier, Everin, same bird-faced diplomat type as before. He was bleeding from a cracked beak, feathers matted with dirt, but still breathing. Broadcast time, I told him. He flinched. We're just observers. You must understand, we were told this place was sacred, a peace site. I leaned in, voice low. Then maybe you should have stayed out of our graveyard. He trembled as Riker shoved a transmission device into his hands. You're going to speak to your people, Riker said. And you're going to tell them the war gods are awake. The Everin hesitated. I stepped forward, the barrel of my rifle gently pressing against his chest. Talk, I said. The camera activated. The alien's voice was shaky but clear. This is Delegate Ress of the Everan Observational Council. I am currently in what was once known as Earth. I am surrounded by human military forces. I repeat, they have returned. He swallowed hard, glancing toward me. They are not ghosts. They are not myths. They are real, and they are reclaiming their world. I ended the feed. We pushed it to every open comm channel. Pirate frequencies, diplomatic satellites, even black market relay nodes. Within minutes, the entire sector would know. No more rumors. No more whispers. Humans were awake, and they weren't asking for permission. The AI Argus chimed in through my neural link. Incoming fleet signatures detected. Origin, Unified Council Peacekeeper Corps. 17 vessels. High atmosphere entry in progress. Estimated landing, 15 minutes. So they were sending peacekeepers now. Not diplomats, not drones. Troops. Mobilize, I ordered. Full battle gear, get the walkers running, heat up the damn warforge if it still works. If they want to fight, they'll get one. Riker grinned for the first time. Been waiting to bleed something that matters. I looked across the shattered skyline, once human towers now held up by alien scaffolding, buildings that were never theirs to build. We'll hold this city, I said, even if we burn it to keep it. Then I switched to fleet-wide comms. My voice would be heard by every awakened human soldier across the system. This is 5 Helix. Earth is under siege. Not by us, by them. For 5 centuries they buried our legacy, turned our home into a lie, our bones into artifacts. No more. Today we fight not to reclaim history, but to remind them of it. No applause, no cheers, just the cold, silent readiness of soldiers who knew what was coming. Above us, the sky cracked open again. Ships descended, engines howling, guns loaded. And humanity, once the galaxy's nightmare, stood waiting. They came down like gods from heaven, ships shaped like wings, polished silver hulls glinting in the twilight sky. The Unified Council didn't send peacekeepers to negotiate. These weren't envoys or guards. These were executioners. 17 vessels, heavy dropships loaded with mechanized infantry and exoframes. They hit the ground just beyond the ridge, the force of their landing throwing up dust and thunder like a mockery of old legends. I watched it all from the high point of the ruins, eyes narrowed behind my visor. They moved with the confidence of men who believed the myths weren't true. That belief was going to die with them. They brought armor, Riker said beside me, loading a charge into his magnetic lance. Smart, but they forgot we invented war before they invented flight. They're trying to scare us, I said. Make a show. Riker spat into the dirt. Then let's make a mess. The enemy deployed fast. Precision movements, textbook formation. These weren't fresh recruits. Council forces were disciplined, well-funded, and trained in pacification doctrine. They didn't see us as equals. They saw us as a problem to be controlled. They were in for a lesson. Argus, I said, tapping into the Vault AI. Status on the Warforge? Operational, came the cold response. Limited power reserves, 6 Titan-class frames available, charging rail cores now. Deploy 2, I ordered. Save the rest for the real hell. Moments later, the ground beneath our position shook. 2 massive armored frames rose from the vault's hidden bay, walking fortresses, relics of the last human war. 30 feet tall, draped in faded black plating and etched with old kill sigils. Ancient machines, but still meaner than anything the galaxy had dared build since. The enemy commander approached the edge of the ridge with a translation device in hand, flanked by 2 towering alien soldiers, Vatarian forces, broad and scaled like upright crocodiles. He was a humanoid, council-born, probably bred for diplomacy. His face was calm, but his eyes flicked from the Warforge units to our infantry lines with growing dread. This territory is under council protection, he called out. You are in violation of the Restoration Accords. Stand down immediately. I stepped forward, helmet off, war paint still burned faint into my skin. You see what's behind me? I asked him. I see a war crime in progress. He snapped. No, I said. You see history correcting itself. His eyes narrowed. We buried you for a reason. I smiled cold. Yeah, and that reason just pulled a railgun out of the dirt. He opened his mouth to speak again, but that was when the first shot fired. Not ours. Theirs. One of their mechanized frames fired a high-velocity plasma round straight into the ridge. Maybe a nervous soldier. Maybe a calculated warning. Either way, it didn't matter. They'd made the decision for us. Fire at will! I barked. The sky exploded. Our Warforge walkers surged forward, shoulder cannons igniting with thunder. Ground troops sprinted behind cover, unleashing rail slugs and old-school coil-shot pulsers. Riker was already in motion, his suit gliding over debris as he dropped 3 enemies before they touched dirt. The enemy responded with brutal efficiency. Plasma nets, suppression fields, ground mines. They came to cleanse us, not capture. That made them dangerous. But it also made them predictable. I dove behind an overturned transport wreck and reloaded as dirt blasted into the air around me. The Warforge on the left, Unit Dagger 1, crashed through a council formation like a sledgehammer through glass. Its pulse blade ignited, cleaving through alien armor like paper. "Riker," I called out over comms. "Push right. Flank 'em hard." "Already on it," he growled, his voice crackling through comms. I just introduced myself to 3 of their commanders. None of them said hello back. Explosions rolled across the battlefield, chewing through the concrete of old human buildings. I saw one of ours go down, a young soldier barely thawed, caught in a blast. No time to mourn, no time to think. The council thought this would be an easy purge. They were wrong. We fought like the past had never ended, like every dead brother, every erased city, every buried truth was screaming through our blood. We didn't fight for conquest. We fought because they took something from us, and we wanted it back. By the time the dust began to settle, half the enemy drop fleet was scrap. Fires burned across the ridge. Smoke choked the sky. Bodies, human and alien, littered the ground. But we were still standing, still breathing, still angry. Tren the Zilith stood at the edge of the ruins, his skin pale, eyes wide. You killed them. You really killed them." I walked past him, blood and ash on my face, the weight of history on my back. "No," I said. "This was just the opening act." The council didn't send reinforcements. They sent a message, a system-wide broadcast echoing through every open channel from the Kuiper Fringe to the Ort Cradle, in a dozen languages and dialects. It was polished, diplomatic, and sterile. A carefully crafted piece of propaganda meant to sway public sympathy and paint us as a mistake, an accident of history better left buried. The human species has unlawfully reactivated prohibited war assets and violated the Restoration Accords. This is not a liberation. This is a regression. The Council does not wish for war, but it will enforce peace. Enforce peace. That was rich coming from the people who turned our home into a fenced-off museum and called it a peace offering, who built temples over mass graves and taught their children that humans were extinct because we were too unstable. They didn't fear us because of our violence. They feared us because we were right, because every empire that ever underestimated humanity wound up choking on our ashes. And now they were scrambling, rushing to hold the leash of a beast they'd locked in a cage and forgotten how to kill. But it was too late. The leash was broken. We weren't waiting for the next move. We were making it. The War Council, my War Council, met inside the ruins of an old skyscraper that still bore the faded remains of a logo, Cavtech Industries. The windows were shattered, the walls scorched. But it held. There were 10 of us, commanders from other awakened vaults, men and women who led fleets, AI battalions, ground strike forces. Most of them didn't speak much. They didn't need to. The silence between us said enough. "What's the next target?" one of them asked. Tall, gaunt, ran the reawakened 6th Fleet, call sign Ironmark. I pulled up the map overlay. It projected over the cracked table in a dim blue haze. "This," I said, pointing to a bright red system. Erin 9. "It's where the Council manufactures their A-class weapons, drones, cloak tech, antimatter platforms. If we hit it, we cut off their ability to fight." "You mean to cripple them?" "No," I replied. "I mean to humiliate them." Riker leaned forward, arms crossed. "We don't just destroy their supply lines. We take it, make it ours." Ironmark raised an eyebrow. You want to occupy Run 9? I want them to know we're not ghosts anymore. We're back in the game. A pause, then a nod. I'll bring the AIs, someone said. Another. We'll hit their outer docks first. And just like that, we were planning an invasion. Not for conquest, not for territory, but for message. Before the Council could spin their lies any tighter, we'd jam a human boot through their front door. The fleet launched the next cycle. Stealth jumps using dark space drives. Old tech. Dangerous. Illegal. Ours. I boarded Judicator, a long-range dreadnought still bearing the black-on-red insignia of the last war. The hull looked like it had been carved out of hate and built for vengeance. Riker sat beside me in the command pit, calibrating the forward batteries. What do we do when the rest of the galaxy comes for us? I didn't look at him. They already did, I said. Now it's our turn. As Judicator powered up, I looked through the bridge viewport at Earth shrinking behind us. It was still scarred, still broken, but it was ours again. And we'd made damn sure the stars remembered why humans were the reason empires fell. Run 9 was supposed to be untouchable, a fortress system buried in a nebula of electromagnetic storms and fortified asteroid belts. They called it the Forge, the birthplace of the Council's deadliest toys. Every drone fleet, every stealth missile, every orbital silencer ever used to enforce peace came out of those factories. The Council believed it was unassailable, but they didn't plan for war gods with a grudge. Judicator dropped out of dark space like a hammer falling from orbit, followed by 7 warships in tight formation, Ghost Fleet dreadnoughts, AI battlecruisers, and 2 Warforge carriers so old their registration tags had faded into myth. The system's defenses responded instantly: auto-batteries, drone swarms, fleet interceptors. It was beautiful in a savage way. The stars themselves seemed to flinch as our ships tore into their sky like wolves through a sheepfold. And I was at the front. I stood on Judicator's command deck, hands clasped behind my back, the enemy's weapons lighting up the view screen. Every alarm, every impact tremor just felt like noise. Noise I'd waited centuries to hear again. Primary target? Riker asked, strapped into the targeting cradle. The Foundry Core, I said. We take that. We break their spine. Good, he growled. I owe these bastards something loud. Our AI, Argus, controlled the forward assault, its voice colder than any human officer. Launching Black Core missiles, targeting stations E through H, minimal civilian presence, collateral risk, irrelevant. Do it, I ordered. The screen flared white as the missiles screamed across space, silent, fast, unstoppable. They hit the outer shipyards like thunder from the grave. Metal ripped, shields collapsed. Fire bloomed where factories once hovered, serene and untouched. Their fleet scrambled, but they were too slow, too soft, too convinced that humanity was just a story with no ending. We were the ending. Riker slammed 2 more intercepts and laughed. They brought peacekeepers to a goddamn war. Inside the chaos, drop pods launched. Ours. Thousands of human soldiers, old blood warriors riding metal coffins straight into the fire. No hesitation, no retreat. I was with them, because I don't lead from a chair. My pod hit hard, throwing me into a blast crater outside the Foundry's central control spire. I rose into hell, gunfire in every direction, heat scorching the air, the ground shaking beneath my boots. Enemy forces poured out of tunnels, drones swarming overhead. Their shock troops were organized, disciplined. But that didn't matter. They weren't fighting for survival. We were. I pushed forward with my unit, Riker at my side, blood across his visor. Our Warforge stomped through the fire behind us, tearing through enemy armor like it was paper. One of the Council commanders, a Vatari mech pilot, charged us in a double-barreled assault frame. She was fast, brutal, trained. I was faster. I tore her cockpit open with an EMP burst and shoved a grenade inside before she even realized I'd moved. Her death lit up the sky behind me as I marched through the flames, soaked in ash. The foundry gates fell minutes later. I kicked the doors in myself. The control room was packed with engineers, alien, terrified, scrambling to destroy data before we could access it. One tried to reach for a pistol. Riker shot his hand off. Another tried to run. I didn't give him the chance. I stood in the center of the room, blood on my boots, and opened the main terminal. Argus streamed into the system in seconds, consuming everything. Data secured. It said, "We now control 72% of the Council's weapons output. Remaining facilities crippled." That was it. We'd taken their armory, stolen their hammer, burned their shield. And as the last enemy cruiser fled into hyperspace, I opened fleet-wide comms, human channels, council lines, open frequencies. "This is not a negotiation," I said. "This is a reckoning. You erased us, buried us, pretended we were myths. Now you remember who we are." I paused, let it sink in. "We're not just soldiers. We're not just relics. We're war gods, and your peace was built on a lie." Then I ended the transmission. Behind me, Riker was leaning against a console, breathing hard, watching the sky light up with burning council debris. "So," he said, "we won." I shook my head. "No," I said, "we reminded them." And somewhere, out in the galaxy, the message would spread. Humanity was not gone. It had just been sleeping, and someone very stupid had woken us up.